All right, so I just got this comment, or it came in for the video that I made last night that is really popular for some reason. And it just goes over the same talking points that I make in every single video that we're all screwed. But this person left this comment, and I took this comment and I turned it into a story. But while I was waiting for the story to generate, it reminded me a lot of working at that place after college that paid, I think, $2 above the minimum wage. It was a call center run by the company Insight. And when I got there, I remember thinking to myself, the recruiter made it seem like I was going to be working in an IT department. Everything about the interview, about meeting the management, about that job sounded like I was just going to be working in a cubicle. But the reality was that they were looking for people who would take the worst kind of job. And to me, what I found most deceptive is that they didn't understand why I wasn't happy and why their turnover was absolutely abominable there. I mean, you would see people get up and walk off the job after starting the job, maybe even for just a few hours. They could not hold on to anyone. And the people that were there long term, the people that had those little numbers on their desk that said 5+ years on them, you would look at their faces and they were dead inside. Like the between the low wages and the monotonous work and the way that they pressured people to act on the phones like it was some big deal about what you did there was just terrible. And I remember the exact night that I got fired because I had called my boss because they were having a major emergency on site. Something major went down, and I had never had to deal with an emergency escalation after work when I was the only person around in my group. And so I called my boss on his personal number because the management always has to be on 24/7 on call. And he was at a bar and he was drunk off of his you know what. And I called to tell him that I needed to do an escalation to the crisis management team. And he told me not to do that. And of course, I just finished my shift and I went home the next day. I got fired. And I thought about all the times in which I was told that this was a great starting career, that after a year you were going to be making this much money and that you'd be transferred to a better department and all you had to do was just hold on. Well, they were all lies. And so as soon as I had made a mistake, I mean, obviously you don't have any training, and sometimes you end up in jobs where there isn't any training and you have to figure it out. But the second you can't figure it out, you become disposable. And that's what I felt reading through this comment, and that's the script that I also generated. And so, with that said, let me get into again the first paragraph generated for by this character. So, you ever feel like no matter how hard you work, it's never enough? Like you're just another number to the people at the top? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. I gave my everything to a job that didn't even see me as a person, just a tool to use and toss aside when it was convenient for them. That's exactly how I felt. In the beginning of the job that I just described, it was like, you can build a family, build a life, buy a house with this job. It was such a rosy experience at the beginning until you realized one dirty trick after another in the workplace. Like they brought in this guy and he seemed really friendly at first. And then suddenly he's like, read the script. We don't want you to do anything other than read the script. And I'm like, I don't, you need someone that, works in India to read scripts. I'm not here to read scripts. This wasn't part of the interview of the position that I thought that I was taking. And this guy's attitude about people who didn't want to do things exactly the way that the corporation wanted was ridiculous. And I clashed with this guy. I clashed with my supervisor all the time over their ridiculous treatment of the employees. I mean, telling someone to go back to their desk and sit down because the day still has 30 seconds left in it was how stupid this place was. And you're just, day after day, you just would come home and I'm like, you know what? Someone's going to complain. They're going to listen to the recording and then they're just going to fire me. But with their retention levels being horribly low, they had to hold on to the most desperate of workers, right? You weren't working there. If you had options, you weren't working there. And desperation is something that corporate America absolutely loves. Desperation in the workplace, to me, is the number one factor that they're looking for among the proletariat. How desperate are you? Because you know that this is true, because a lot of jobs won't tell you what they actually pay. Or like that job interview that I showed you guys last week, where the woman went in to interview for a management position and she asked for what I would consider to be a modest $40,000 for a full time management job on call. And they offered her $12.50 an hour as her base salary. And you're like, oh my God, that's not even minimum wage here in Arizona. Minimum wage here in Arizona is $14.35. So wherever this place is, it I just don't understand how you can offer a grown adult person $12.50 an hour and then get upset when they don't think that's reasonable pay for any job. I mean, the only thing that I would think $12 would be good for would be, I don't know, going number two on the side of the road and someone just runs by and throws $12.50 at you. I don't know what they're thinking with compensation, but they always act so butthurt when you look at them and you laugh at the kinds of wages that they're offering. And then once they do find someone desperate enough, and this is my experience from Kroger's, it's like once you find someone desperate enough to take a job working at the bottom, and then quickly figure out this person's here. He's a desperation worker. He's not coming here to bust his hump. He's not coming here to give 110%. This is a desperation worker that shows up every day with the thought in his head of minimum wage, minimum effort. Any worker that shows up at a minimum wage job in America is going to have that mentality. But somehow management, sometimes I think even the executive people don't understand how humiliating it is to work for the minimum wage. In fact, I think that somehow they convince themselves that you are worth nothing and therefore they don't have to pay you anything. Despite their thinking that way, you still have all of the same bills and needs that the executives have. You still want to be comfortable. You still want to drive a nice car. You still want to live in a safe neighborhood. And you would like to thrive towards something better. But the reality hits you in the face very hard soon after you start a job like this. They don't care about you. They honestly could give a crap whether or not you weren't there tomorrow because they'll just find someone else, and in the job interview, they will evaluate how desperate you look. And for some people, they have to say this: I can't afford to work here. And this was a problem that I remember during the 2008 financial crisis, is that I was going to school shortly after that, and the guy that worked at a small shop, mom and pop plumbing shop, right across the street, actually right around the corner from where Mello used to work, I'd ride my bike past him and I'd ask him, he's like, why are you here all the time? Because he was the owner of this business. And I asked, why don't you have any other employees? Why do you have to be here every day, all day? And he looked at me and simply said, and he wasn't mad. He just said, no one can afford to work here because I pay minimum wage. And I thought, well, if you acknowledge the fact that you pay minimum wage, like a lot of restaurant jobs, they pay minimum wage. And then you wonder why you get that class of people. And he said, people can't afford to work here on what I'm willing to pay. And it's businesses like that that fail. And they're all around me. If you walk around in my neighborhood, you're going to see, I mean, just coming out of my apartment complex and then heading towards the Circle K, there's like, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 businesses just in that that commercial area over here by where the the bar is, where there's a bar on one side of the parking lot, a bar on the other side of the parking lot, and then a church in the middle, and then all around it are just closed commercial properties, storefronts. I mean, that's what it looks like because these places cater towards desperation workers. And if you're going to build a business on desperation workers, you have to understand that their lives are miserable at home. And if you choose to not look at the type of workers that you're hiring because you want to keep corporate profits high and then want to act surprised when they don't show up on time, where they call out, or like with most retail workers, they just stop showing up, or they get upset that they have to work all the holidays. When I was working at Walmart for the new young employees, one of the hardest things for them was to realize that as long as I work here, I will not be able to spend my holidays with my family, celebrate my birthday, be with other people when I want to be, because the schedule is absolutely ridiculous. In fact, I was just talking to one of the Kroger's cashiers yesterday. She opens, she closes, she starts mid shift. Her shift can start at 6 a.m., 1 p.m., or it can start at 4 p.m. You can open and close, you can get less hours. There's no stability in a job working in retail. And it's designed to be that way because they tell you when you need to be there. And that also makes it impossible to get a second job because they punish you the second you tell them, you know what, I need these certain days off because I need to have another job. And they just look at you like you're stupid. And I've seen them do it to so many people where like, I can't get by on this desperation job. And they just like look at you like, what are you saying? They don't understand. They pretend that they don't understand what you're saying. And that to me is infuriating. And with that the longest monologue ever, let's transition into our talking points from this particular story that it generated. So, companies often market themselves as family to employees, but the reality is starkly different. The moment profits are at risk, workers, no matter how loyal or hardworking, are the first to be discarded. I mean, I literally told a person that I talk to infrequently that as soon as her company merges with another company, that the low level workers were the first people to be discarded. They announced the merger on Monday. The next day, she didn't have a job anymore. They discard the people at the bottom as absolute garbage. I feel like the bottom level workers are actual bags of garbage. And as soon as the tides change and the garbage starts to smell too bad, then they take you out to the dumpster. But they'll keep you inside of your bag for as long as they can tolerate how bad you smell to them. But as soon as it becomes convenient to get rid of you, they do. And that's exactly what happened to this person. They came to grab her like the bag of garbage she was, escorted her out of the building to her car, and forced her off of the property. That was the end. There's no negotiation, there's no nothing. They just look at you as absolutely nothing. And the worst part is that when they send out newsletters, they talk all rosy to the employees, right? Oh, all of our family members are important. We have resources for workers that are having financial problems. Because when I worked at that call center, everyone was having financial problems. Everyone was having to dip into the employee assistance program almost on a monthly basis in order to avoid becoming homeless. There was a guy that I knew that I met there very shortly after I got hired on that basically used the employee assistance program to pay his rent every month because the pay was just too low. And it was that bad. It was either help the employees out that way or not have employees, or have employees that eventually became homeless, right? I had to use that same program in order to get into the current apartment that I'm in because, of course, it happened to me. Low wages and terrible hours always lead to instability, financial instability in people's lives. So I had to go get a loan, and they gave it to me just like that. And I was like, wow, you guys, there's desperation on the part of the worker, and there is definitely desperation on the part of the corporation. Usually not to that extent, but since I benefited from it in the past, I can tell you it does exist. All right, talking point number two. Policies are crafted to minimize costs, often at the expense of employees' rights and security. HR often uses loopholes to deny unemployment benefits, leaving fired employees stranded with no safety net. So, this person who I just mentioned was the bag of garbage that got taken out. The way that they were able to tell her to hit the curb was through a point system. And the point system allows them to bypass the unemployment system because it shows that the employee didn't care about the job. They use points to get you on being late or not showing up or not meeting performance goals. It's all on a point system. They submit this to the unemployment office and they say you were a bad worker, therefore you shouldn't qualify for unemployment benefits. And that's exactly what happened to her. They submitted a no unemployment form, and she didn't get anything. I mean, it's not much, but $200 a week still's better than nothing. But that point system was designed by devious people in order to make certain that once you kick someone to the curb, they don't benefit from it in any conceivable way, which is necessary for corporations to do when you're hiring workers on a daily basis. The Kroger's across the street from my house, they lose so many people that it's nearly impossible for them to be fully staffed. In fact, they haven't been fully staffed in years. They have a 50-foot banner on the front of every single Kroger's asking for applications. They have daily interviews, and yet sometimes I've seen people myself show up and be like, I'm here for an interview, and they just look at the person like, we're not doing that today, after you told them to come in and interview. But that's just the crappy nature of bottom level jobs is that sometimes they're hard to get. This same person's been unemployed now for I guess 3 or 4 months now. I mean, if they're able to scrape by on alternative income sources, that's what women do. So, yeah, I don't understand why that has to be that way. But let's get into our final talking point. From low wages to job insecurity, workers across industries face the same issues: being overworked, underpaid, and undervalued. This cycle of exploitation continues unchecked because of a lack of accountability at the top. Executives, board members, shareholders at the top, and the absence of solidarity among workers to push back against these practices. Now, I don't blame the workers because if you walk into a system where you're paid nothing because you're worth nothing, you're not invested in your employment. You see it as transient work, and more of the proletariat has entered into that transient work in which you come in, you know your time is limited, you know you're not going to get anything out of this. There are no health benefits. The Kroger's has a union that doesn't really do anything, or else I would think that a union would fight for a living wage. They don't. I think starting pay is $15 an hour if you've been there a while. I mean, one of the people that I've seen working there for good at least 10 plus years, because this grocery store that I go to is the grocery store that I've been going to since I was 6 years old. And there are people that have been there a really long time, and when you ask them what they make, they're like 24, and I'm maxed out at this position. $24 an hour after an entire lifetime of working inside of a Kroger's. I can imagine what that does to your mind. But as with any other place, things used to be a lot better for workers. But as both workers and corporations decide that neither is invested in each other, then there's a disconnect. So no one cares. And the byproduct of no one caring is job insecurity and exploitation. You can't remove exploitation from any desperation job in America. And I believe desperation is climbing up in corporations. It's not just the minimum wage workers. Desperation workers are starting to become more senior level individuals in corporations. Because let's say you got fired from this company and they offer you a senior level position doing the exact same thing at this other company, but they're paying you $10 less. Well, you don't have much of a choice if you can't find another job that's desperate for people who are overqualified and underpaid. That's what they want. They want to see people groveling at the bottom, rolling around in the metaphorical mud like the proles that they are. They want to see you as dirty, disgusting, and invisible to some extent. But that's where I'm going to leave this video. There was a lot of extra rambling on my part. I got to get ready to go to the gym. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will probably go live at noon today while I'm eating lunch again.